Parkinson's is a progressive brain disorder that affects mobility and mental ability.
Barry Marion, owner of Right at Home in Fargo, is here to talk about how we can detect if someone is showing signs of Parkinson's disease. Barry, welcome back to the show. It's good to have you here, man.
Thank you. Good to be here.
This disease, you know, I've been around people that have had it. It is really, really challenging to deal with. So I guess what are the early stages of onset that people should be looking for?
Well, I think a lot of times it's caused by a lack of dopamine deep in the center of your brain. And sometimes symptoms are a little difficult to find, but they will start to have some motor skills that are some rigidity and some shaking and things like that. And I think those are usually the first signs of it, and they have difficulty making complex movements where we take for granted where you walk and you can eat at the same time. They have difficulty doing that, so they have to start breaking down tasks into singular type tasks. So I just think the motor skills are probably the first thing, because your memory is still pretty good at that point and so forth, and you start feeling a little bit depressed eventually and stuff too, but those are a little bit later in the
So
stages.
is there a lot of misdiagnosis? Because I mean, I think you could say, hey, a lot of people are going to have those kind of situations take place as they age.
Yeah, they do, and they don't even really know what causes it, which is really kind of sad. They believe it's a little bit hereditary, but they also believe environmental things affect it. So, and they have shown that farmers, for instance, or in rural areas tend to get a little bit more Parkinson's. They think that's from the exposure to chemicals. And they actually had a study done on Muhammad Ali too, where physical, damage or, to the brain and so forth can progress it as well. And they can pretty much document every time he took a big blow to the head, they notice his symptoms getting worse. So it's a kind of a combination of all three like that. It can be misdiagnosed because it's so close to other things like dementia and other types of brain disorders. And you can have multiple brain disorders too, but Parkinson's is a specific disease, and that's the lack of dopamine, which is kind of specific to Parkinson's.
Well, and you mentioned too when it first kind of comes on, and we said before it started, it can come on strong and fast, it can kind of come on slow. I'm sure since they are there mentally, it can get really frustrating for them. How do we help those people then once they are diagnosed?
Yeah, they have medications and so forth, and really it's just something like what we do at Right at Home too, and it's not unlike how we take care of our other clients. They eventually have difficulty walking, so we just make sure there aren't any trip hazards in the house. They'll eventually have trouble bathing, going to the bathroom, getting dressed, and eventually they have trouble swallowing. And that's how a lot of complications can arise. They get aspiration because food can get into the lungs, because with that Parkinson's, it has, you just have trouble swallowing. And then almost always you will get depression and anxiety, whether it's just from the initial diagnosis, and then eventually it's literally a chemical issue of depression. So that is a huge problem.
So let's say I go into the doc and I get an early diagnosis. Is there anything I can do to help mitigate some of the things that are going to happen or slow it down? Or
there is, again, there's medication, and then you want to get moving. You want to stay busy and exercise, and that's another thing. We have partnered up with the National Parkinson's Foundation for many years, and their big fundraiser is called Moving Day, and that's coming in on June 2nd, and that's at Edgewood in Fargo. So I encourage anybody who is knowing anybody with Parkinson's or whatever, we will have a big booth out there, Right at Home will, and it's a fun day. Everybody's getting out moving. There'll be Tai Chi and yoga and different things, and you kind of move at your own pace. It's just walking, but that's a big thing too. So it's staying stimulated by your brain, staying active, and then working with your doctor to get on some medication to try to, it's usually replacing the dopamine is what it is. And what I've heard too, and I'm no doctor, but you eventually will build tolerance up to these drugs too. So they don't want to give it to you right away if you're not really, have really bad signs at that point, because eventually you will build up tolerance and then they won't work anymore.
Wow.
All right, we'll have more on this right after this short break.